Shalom everybody, welcome to Beit Tefillah and part 1 of our series on keeping the feast days. Out of all the video requests I've ever gotten, making a video or a series of videos on keeping the feast days has to be the most requested by far. So let's get into it. The Hebrew word for appointed times is Moedim, and Elohim appointed for us several Moedim or feast days throughout the year. Now there's a lot of people leaving churches and religion and pagan holidays wanting to know more about keeping the scriptural feast, but there seems to be a lot of confusion out there about how to keep them. This video series is a guide on how we keep these feast days to the best of our ability according to the Torah. Not everybody's going to agree with us entirely on all points, and that's okay. We should all be studying this out and trying to keep them when Elohim said and how he said to keep them. Some of this information is also in separate videos that I've done in the past, but I want to restate it for this series to have it all in one place. Now this video, which is the first video in this series, is on establishing the first day of the Scriptural New Year, as this day must be established correctly because it sets our timeline for all the feast days. The first day of the 7th month confirms our timeline for the fall feast days, but if we don't get the first month correct, it's going to throw them all off. Genesis 1:14, and Elohim said, "Let lights come to be in the expanse of the heavens to separate the day from the night, and let them be for signs and appointed times and for days and years." So that's what Elohim gave to us for signs. Now people that are new to this and just coming into the feast days and wanting to know when they begin, they naturally need to start somewhere, and they need to know, okay, how do we set up the very first day of the year so we can begin counting? And a lot of these people are going to be told that when the barley is declared Abib in the land of Israel, that the next new moon is the first of the year for everybody, wherever they may live. But is that correct? The majority of people think this way, so we need to take a good look at this. First, we need to look at the understanding of the word Abib. From the Brown Driver Briggs Concordance, we see that Abib means fresh, young barley ears, barley, month of ear forming, a greening of crops, of growing green. The month name Abib is used in Scripture as the name of the month when the children of Israel left Egypt in the spring of the year, when evidence of life is returning to the land and the young ears of grain are green. So there are those who say that Elohim told the children of Israel when to start the first of the year by the barley being Abib when they came into the land of Israel. But is that correct? Let's read Exodus 12, 1-2. And Yahweh spoke to Moses and to Aharon in the land of Egypt, saying, "This month is the beginning of months for you. It is the first month of the year for you." Okay, so now we see Elohim told them when the first of the year would be when they were still in Egypt. So the new year had nothing to do with barley in Israel at this point. The following scripture is also given to support using barley to set the first month of the year in Exodus 9, 29-31. And Moses said to him, "As soon as I go out of the city, let me spread out my hands to Yahweh. Let the thunder cease and the hail be no more, so that you know the earth belongs to Yahweh. But as for you and your servants, I know that you do not yet fear before Yahweh Elohim." And the flax and the barley were smitten, for the barley was in the head, and the flax was in the bud. So let's realize that this plague, that this hailstorm, happened in Egypt. This is barley growing in Egypt in Egyptian weather. So if this determines the first month of the year, wouldn't we go by the barley in Egypt each year? Let me ask you something. We know the geese fly south for the winter. So do the geese flying south make the winter start? That's pretty illogical, right? When Elohim told us that when the barley is Abib in the first month of the year, would we assume that the barley being Abib would start the spring? Well, that's also illogical. We can know the seasons by what happens during them. Elohim was telling them that the first month would be during the time that the barley was Abib. How we understand it is, you will see that the beginning of spring is here, as it is the time that the barley will be Abib. As in, you will know that the season of winter is near when the geese fly south for the winter. So, if not using the barley, what do we use to set our first month of the year in the spring? Again, Genesis 1:14. And Elohim said, "Let lights come to be in the expanse of the heavens to separate the day from the night, and let them be for signs and appointed times and for days and years." No mention here of an earthly witness such as Barley. Nowhere in that verse. Genesis 1:14 tells us that all of our signs for the appointed times or Moedim, days and years, can be found in the heavens. So in applying Genesis 1:14, what if we use the sun in the form of the vernal equinox to determine the first month of the year? Hear me out on this. Stay with me while I finish this, okay? This system defines the first month to start with the first new moon after the spring or vernal, or Abib, equinox. The spring equinox is that time when the sun passes directly over the equator of the earth. It's called the equinox because on that day, on the equator, day and night are of equal length. It's called spring equinox because this event ends winter and brings the spring season and the warmer weather due to the hemisphere that the sun is entering. So does it make more sense that the new year would start in the wintertime or in the springtime when new growth starts? We use both the sun and the moon, according to Genesis 1:14, to set the beginning of the year, as we use the first new moon after the spring or vernal equinox. Both signs are in the heavens. If you use the barley and the moon, you omit a sign in the heavens. And Elohim said, "Let light come to be in the expanse of the heavens to separate the day from the night, and let them be for signs and appointed times and for days and years." Some would argue, I don't see equinox anywhere in that sentence. True. But what we are looking at is lights in the expanse of the heavens and not witnesses upon the earth. Barley is obviously an earthly witness. Twice per year, we have exact and perfect separations between day and night. The first is the spring or vernal equinox, and the second is the autumnal equinox. Now, the barley is only going to be Abib during one of those. And this is why Yahuwah said, that will be the start of the year for you at that time when the barley is Abib. There are many different methods that people use to reckon the new year. All but one that we know of needs tweaking by man to keep the set-apart appointed times of Elohim in their correct seasons. Without a system of regulation such as Adar Beit, for example, the Moedim would just fall out of season. We know of no other system of checks and balances within Scripture. The equinox, however, seems to fit the bill quite well. It was set up by the Creator, it's out of reach of man's corruption, and when used with the new crescent moon sighted after the spring equinox, with the Abib barley as another but not needed witness, really, it keeps the Moedim in line and correct timing beginning with the first day of the year. The Abib barley seems to be a witness given due to the sun. It's the sun's work to Abib the barley, but not a sign of the sun itself. It is a witness from the earth which is not listed among the things which gives us our signs and seasons, the sun and moon and stars, or the luminaries in the heavens. Here in North America, when it's our springtime, and it's also the same for the land of Israel, it's fall for Australia, for example, and the countries or continents in the southern hemisphere. So if believers were to set their season of spring or the start of their year by the barley in Israel, how well would that work out for them? Would they just plant their crops just to have them freeze? Elohim gave us the signs that we can see in the heavens wherever we have been scattered. How long have we been in the dispersion now? Let's see, it was roughly 772 BCE when they were scattered by a Neo-Assyrian empire, roughly 2,738 years ago. How were those people who were scattered far from the land of Israel have known when the barley was ripe in Israel? If you just sent a messenger, well, the message would arrive too late, and they would have missed Passover and the Feast of Unleavened Bread by the time they received it. Something would have had to have been developed that was quicker. The first transcontinental phone call occurred in 1915, which was 104 years ago at the time I'm making this video. So are we to assume that Elohim's people could have not have possibly kept his Moedim at the correct times for over 2,600 years until the telephone was invented? Well, that's just silly. You know, if only the Creator would have placed some giant lights in the heavens or something, so he could let us know when to keep his Moedim wherever we were scattered. Once again, Genesis 1:14, and Elohim said, "Let lights come to be in the expanse of the heavens to separate the day from the night, and let them be for signs and appointed times, and for days and years." The definition of the Hebrew word Abib is Abib, adjective, spring-like, vernal. Nowhere is barley part of that definition. We need to stop assuming that something is correct for wherever we have been scattered simply because that's how it's been done in Israel for many years. Let's also look at another example. If the people were off on a journey in another land at the time of Passover, they were still told to keep it, as we can hear in Numbers 9:10-11. Speak to the children of Israel, saying, when any male of you or your generations is unclean for a being, or is far away on a journey, he shall still perform the Passover of Yahweh. On the 14th day of the second month between the evenings, they perform it with unleavened bread and bitter herbs. They eat it. They are told to keep it a month later, but in order to do so accurately, they would still need to know when the correct time was a month prior. But tell me, if a man is on a journey far away, tell me, how is this man going to know when the barley is Abib in Israel? If it was 2,500 years ago, he could not have possibly known. But he would have done what everyone else did, used the new moon after the spring equinox. Some may use this argument. It should be noted that the equinox is never mentioned in the Hebrew Bible. Genesis 1:14, which has often been cited as proof of the equinox theory, does not mention the equinox either. Okay, fair enough. Modern religion has got people thinking that if you follow the signs in the heavens that you're into astrology or that you're pagan. But we follow the sun every day to start and end our days. At sunset Friday starts our Sabbath. We watch for the new moons to blow our shofars and start Yom Teruah as well. This is all according to Elohim's instruction and is not pagan. And for the keeping of the new year, the feast days, and all the Moedim that Elohim commanded us to keep, we do not need any signs in the physical land of Israel to keep any of the Moedim wherever we have been scattered around the world. The new moon begins the new month according to Elohim's calendar. The Gregorian calendar runs apart from that, but it is written that they will think to change times and laws in Daniel 7:25, which they certainly did. And this is why those of us who are now returning to the ancient ways have returned to looking towards the heavens for the signs that Elohim placed there for us as our markers for days and months and years. Wikipedia has the following information on the word month. A month is a unit of time used with calendars which is approximately as long as a natural period related to the motion of the moon. Month and moon are cognates. In linguistics, cognates are words that have a common etymological origin. The traditional concept arose with the cycle of moon phases. Such months, or lunations, are synodic months and last approximately 29.53 days. From excavated tally sticks, researchers have deduced that people counted days in relation to the moon's phases as early as the Paleolithic age. The following verse is Elohim's commandment for Yom Teruah. In Leviticus 23:24. Speak to the children of Israel, saying, in the 7th moon, or month, on the 1st day of the moon, or month, you have a rest, a remembrance, a blowing of trumpets, a set-apart gathering. How do we know when to begin our 7th month and blow our shofars? By the moon. The new moon starts the month. So of course we would start our year by starting on the 1st day of the new moon in the 1st month. And a small side note here, we can double check ourselves for the start of the 7th month by using the first new moon after the fall equinox, as well as simply counting to 7 from month number 1. Something that bears repeating is that the barley is a witness, not a sign. What do we as Elohim's people do when we see the new moon on the 7th month? We blow our shofars and we become witnesses of it. The blowing of our shofars does not start the 7th month any more than the barley starts the 1st month. Despite man-made traditions, we don't use the land of Israel as our timepiece. In the United States, we don't begin our Sabbath when the sun sets in the land of Israel, just like we don't begin our new month when the new moon is sighted in Israel. Elohim put his luminaries in the heavens for all to see, wherever they have been scattered. The Sabbath starts for us when we see the sun set where we are, to begin the 7th day. We start our new moon when we see the new moon where we are. We don't need to hear that the new moon has been sighted in Israel for the start of a new month. Neither do we need to hear from them that the barley is Abib in association with the start of the new year. Okay, I said all what I said in this video so far because I had to dispel that rumor that wherever we've been scattered, we start our new year when the barley is Abib in the land of Israel. because that's false. But I need to make clear in this video the intent of it, which is how to start the new year by the sighting of the first new moon. The moon runs a cycle approximately every 29.5 days. It starts out just as a little sliver, then goes to a full moon halfway through, back to a little sliver, and then it goes dark as the month continues. When it goes dark for a day or two, that's called a conjunction, and it can't be seen. In our understanding, the new moon is when the moon cycle is refreshed, which starts when you can see that first little sliver. Some people call the conjunction the new moon, and technically it is, but it can't be spotted or observed in order to start counting yet. Say you wanted to pick a bucket of apples from an apple tree. We'll compare it to the moon cycles and say that the bucket holds 30 apples. So you start with an empty bucket. You can't see anything in it. It's like the conjunction. You can't see anything to begin counting, okay? You can't look at an empty bucket and say, well, there's one, because it's empty. So when you see the first sliver of the moon, it's like you put an apple in your bucket and you count 1. You do this all the way and every day until the bucket is full with 30 apples after 30 days. Then you empty the bucket out as the moon is in conjunction and nothing can be seen in the sky or in your bucket right at that time. Does that make sense? To say you count from the conjunction is to say you count 0. If you're driving down the road and you don't see a stop sign, it could cost you your life. What good is a sign that you can't see? It's not a sign to you if you can't see it. So I hope that makes it clearer for people who've been questioning, how do we reckon the new year? You reckon the new year to you in your land with the signs that Elohim put up in the heavens for us to see wherever we have been scattered in the dispersion. I hope you will consider what I've said in this video for when you start your new year. Well, I hope this video blessed you, and for part 2 of our series on Passover and unleavened bread, please see the link below in the description. Everybody be blessed and have a wonderful day.